Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for another program. And before we share with you what is it that we are actually talking about today, you know that we like to start with music, and that's what we are about to do, or more exactly, what I am about to do. And I was just telling Katya that I don't deserve to be forgiven because I haven't sung any zarzuela in this series, and I really love zarzuela. For people who have gone through this channel may have already noticed that I have a good number of zarzuelas in there. And so that's what I was thinking for today. And let me recall you that Luisa Fernanda is one of the most popular zarzuelas. And in fact, it's one of the very few that have had been represented in Mexico, and of which I have a very nice memory of, not only for Pepita Emil, the mother of Plácido Domingo, who brought many of those great zarzuelas to Mexico, but also because Luisa Fernanda is the one that I ever saw on stage. And if you're thinking that I am about to sing the tenor's romanza of this zarzuela, let me tell you that you are wrong, because this cute, very nice, brief piece of music is called El Saboyano. It's an habanera. It's how it's actually opening the singing part. And I fell in love with it because of that very first representation that I saw on stage. And somehow the lyrics of this song tell you or give you a hint of what is about to happen. It is usually sung by anybody who wants to sing it. I have heard it on male teenager voices, which I think is the best, and I have also heard it in tenor voices and sometimes in mezzos. So if anyone can sing it, why shouldn't I? So since there is no music in the background, I will try to find a piece of it because I think that it would be very interesting for you if you could hear it. But now let's do that. Let's not play the music because it's already 3 minutes and I can't stop talking. Let me sing for you a piece of this very beautiful riff, cute song that is called El Saboyano. Marchaba el soldadito cuando el mozo le salió a despedir la moza que la amaba y que quería con él partir. Anda con Dios, soldadito, que a las banderas te vas. Yo te prometo y te anuncio que vas a ser general. Y el soldadito le contestaba: paloma mía, yo he de volver, y en nuestra boda serán mis arras los entorchados de brigadier. Y ella se queda sobre un ribazo con el pañuelo diciendo adiós. La prometida del soldadito hasta que apenas se ven los dos. No vuelve el soldadito, ya 10 años que del pueblo salió. No cumple a la mocita la palabra que le empeñó. Y ella le aguarda pensando que si no ha vuelto es quizá para venir con la faja de capitán general. Y el soldadito no la contesta cuando le escribe cartas de amor. Y ella está triste, la pobrecita, porque sospecha que se murió. ¿Quién le dijera que el soldadito su sueña en los brazos de otra mujer. Y que en su boda fueron las zarras, los entorchados de brigadier. Ah, Bueno, esa fue la hermosísima pieza Marchaba el Soldadito, conocida más bien como el saboyano. And I don't know why I'm speaking Spanish when I should be speaking English. So if you please forgive me, maybe because since I sang in Spanish, I went all, and that proves our first point for today, because today's topic is nobody's perfect. So,
Me.
yeah, but Katya, we are about to say that, right? And as you may have already noticed, I spoke in Spanish and I couldn't keep my mind focused on the English language. So let's get started. First thing, I have a good number of cases when the singer is not perfect. So this time we will not give 2 minutes to each, because really we have too much ground to cover. Katya not because she's perfect, but the other singers who need to correct their mistakes really need to talk about it. And it is very, I don't know how to say, why should we be speaking of people not being perfect when we know that nobody's perfect? So if we know that nobody's perfect, why are we expecting our dearest singers to be? Because we praise them for all the nice things that they do, but whenever they fail, we jump into them like tigers who want to devour their praise. So, first one, Katya, look at this one. Voice with no vibrato. Voice that is too white, that has no vibrato at all. What would you like to share us?
Well, I think that vibrato is an acquired skill. It comes to you when you develop a vocal technique. You don't have to have a vibrato that is used with a cappuccino. And it has to do also with styles. For example, in some pieces from Baroque period, you have to sing without vibrato. And you don't have to abuse of vibrato either. But it is desirable to have a right vibrato. I don't imagine, for example, this aria I'm about to sing in a few minutes. O mio bambino caro, vibrating. Oh mio bambino caro, mi piace It sounds weird.
And I would like to mention something else. We have, well, not Katya, but me, the rest of the world that is not perfect. We have our own mistakes, errors, technical difficulties, our own. But when we try to replicate another person's problem, like this one, trying to put your voice with no vibrato, it can even be difficult for us, because since you are used to vibrate, as you perfectly said, it is an acquired skill. So you have been training and rehearsing for years to sing properly with the vibrato, right? So now that you are trying to sing with no vibrato, it's like, oh, like, how is that done?
but it feels like something holding my throat. It's weird.
Yeah, but there are singers, and by the way, I am putting on the screen a meme because I think there is no better way to have fun today than keeping a meme on it, because we usually see ourselves like very fierce, like very powerful, and people look at us like little chickens. I'm going to leave it on the screen for most of the program. But it is a problem when you find a very white voice and it's trying to sing with no or very poor vibrato, and they are trying to sing, for example, Oscar, from Un Ballo in Máscara, Oscar Losa, or something like that. It just doesn't make
Oscar
so,
Loza
no
Manuel
mentira, something like that. And there are voices who have it on the stage and do it. So if you run of those voices, please forgive us. But it is true that that shouldn't happen on stage. The second one, there is another that I had mentioned with you when we were preparing the program. Let me see if I can explain it. You are told to sing a song like "Que gelida manina," and the tenor goes like "Que gelida manina," like before attacking the proper note, like taking it a little lower with softer voice, not properly impostated, and then going for all the volume, which gives a horrible effect.
Yeah,
Because
it's kind of making a crescendo in each note, and it's exhausting to be heard.
yeah, because it's not an ornament of the piece; it's insecurity or the wrong impostation of the singer. So instead of and even worse, when, singers like to do it a lot in the high notes. Instead of attacking it full, they take it lower volume, not properly in the impostation, and I don't know. Think of any famous aria or song. I was just thinking of Rusalka's "Song to the Moon." At the end it has an A, if I remember well. Most of singers do not go full voice. They go like pianissimi, and if they hit the note, they increase the volume and it vanishes afterwards. Please don't do that. If you don't have the note, I would recommend don't
Just
even try.
sing another one.
Sing another piece when you feel comfortable, right?
Perhaps you may sing Voy que zapete.
Maybe, but do it well, because in Voy que Zapete, you may be doing something else wrong, right? But I'm going to mention now one that is going to be of your favorites. Sopranos going for that high note, but do not sing it like a note. We were mentioning that they sound like a cat, instead of
Yeah.
saying that. Can you think of a couple of examples?
I really don't want to try to sample it. Please.
Let's just forget it.
No,
And,
no.
and I think the advice is the same as in the previous comment. If you don't have that high note, if you cannot keep it a reasonable amount of time with a good color, well sustained, right? You'd
If you
better not
don't feel
sing it.
comfortable with it, please don't use it.
Because I don't think anybody has mentioned that to you before, but if the audience, the public realizes that you're having trouble with that note, they suffer because they feel like you will be breaking it when you reach the end of Lucia. People are desperate at their seats because they know that you may break your voice. So, or if you are trying to be Calaf and you are not ready to sing Nessun Dorma at the end, even if for a tenor, depending on the type of tenor you are, the end may or not may be hard. So if you are like a light lyrical tenor, don't even try it. Vinciaro, something like Vinciaro. Vinciaro, you go for that. Let's go for another funny one. Oh my God, this is something that we had mentioned in the past before. The suffocation of the singer at the end of his aria. instead of, sounding nice, Vincero, like that, Vincero. Oh,
It feels
no.
relief when you finish your aria.
But how many times have you seen a singer that finishes like that? Like, and it's most tenors do that. Sopranos, some of them, but mostly tenors do that. And even baritones. Baritones do it, and they are even noisier than a tenor. Because when you think of arias like Di Provenza, El Mar, El Sol, Dio me saudi, Dio me saudi. When you rap it like saudi, very nice. You say, the baritone did it so well. But when they exaggerate and Dio me saudi, Dio me saudi. Oh, yeah. Why do fellow singers like to do that? Why don't they realize that sounds so horrible? Or am I
They
being too
should
tough today?
study their breaths in a better way. They should planify the breathings in the area.
I don't know. Maybe they feel like they are doing, like it is a positive, effective way of wrapping up the song. What would you do if one of your students would do that?
Get away from my class. No, I think we would have to work in the right place of the voice to let your air work in the best way to approach to nice ending. Like Babo Pietà, Pietà.
Yeah.
And instead of Pietà,
Yeah.
Pietà.
And before we go any further, why don't we have you sing something? What is it that you're going to start singing? One of the things that I want, or one of the things that you prepared?
No, I have to choose. It's my right.
Yeah. Yeah, let's say so. Yeah.
It's my voice, so I think I can choose.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get started with O mio bambino.
One of the most famous areas for a soprano. So,
O mio bambino caro, mi piace quando ritorno accompagna l'anello di sì ci vuol andare e se ma per
Brava. I recall a friend who, when we were younger, who told me that the only piece of opera that he liked was this aria, O mio babino caro. This was very famous a dozen years ago from a TV commercial, a TV spot for a wine. That's where he saw it. And that's when he said that that was the only piece of opera that he liked. That's what came to my
Oh,
mind.
that's so sad.
That's so unfair.
It is.
It is. Okay, let's go for another one. I have two ones that are very close. The ingolated voice. We mentioned that uh, in the myths and facts when they said that opera singers sang ingolated. We clarified that it is in fact a matter of technique, the impostation. But we also mentioned that it is true that there are many singers that sing ingolated, which is something that I'm going to let me see if I can do that. Where can I do? Oh, yes, I know which one. You know La Calumnia from Il Barbiere di Siviglia, right? La calunnia è un venticello. Of course, my voice is not of a bass, but and in fact, it happens much more with medium and low voices, which mean basses and baritones. So their natural voice, which will be la calumnia, if the bass that does not feel very secure and wants to project or make his voice sound wider than it actually is, the singer may have the mistake, commit the mistake of ingolating the voice, and instead of La Calumnia, he may say something like La Calumnia, something like that. That sounds like a very
You
weird,
did a great job.
yeah, like a deformed voice. Just take the same example for the other tesituras. And so when the voice of the singer is not natural singing, there is one way of finding out if they are ingolating instead of impostating. And it is that they have problems to change from low, medium, and upper register. Since they don't have the right position, and he felt well saying la calumnia, when he tries to go higher, the same technique of having like inflated the voice will not work. So when he goes for the high notes of the bass, he will just not do it. And what he will do is actually yell. Because people try to compensate a high note with volume, like yelling. That is another way of finding out if a person has the voice properly impostated or is actually ingolating. Would you like to add something?
Yes, I think that is a common mistake. I don't know if we are gonna talk about this later, but I don't think so. It has to do with the misunderstanding of volume or intensity resonance. When you have a right impostation, you don't have to think about your volume. You're gonna sound. You don't have to gel. I mean,
Yeah,
if you are using your phrases, your voice is gonna sound. It has a projection, and you don't have to do weird things.
but it happens. And the next one is another one very close to that. Close but different because it is what I'm going to call strangled voice. Instead, and I am pretty sure you have taught to your students this 1,000 times, it's difficult to explain, but you have to. I will try to explain it, and I know you will correct me because I am not very good at explaining, proof that you are a professor and I am not. So you are better at explaining that. You have to sing with your voice open, but open means that it is not blocked inside the vocal cavity, right? That it
Yeah.
resonates
Yeah.
properly. But people think that it's the opposite, which is another error, which is sing with voce aperta, which is a different mistake. It is different, but when people are singing with a strangled voice, they instead like oh mio, like the oh mio babino caro, instead of going oh mio babino, go like oh mio, like and you feel that the voice is strangled here somewhere around the throat. But tell us a little more about that in your experiences teaching students.
Yeah, I think it has to do with lots of things, and one of that is fear. You don't have you don't want to hurt your voice. You don't want to hurt yourself, and then you cover a lot. But there are lots of ways to cover your sound. A, a wide an open voice might sound like ah, and that's in my throat. It's open, but in my throat. Ah, and it's terrible. And then you try to cover and you send your sound too much to your back. Oh, but it loses bright and loses clarified, and it's hard to know what you're singing. Is it an A? Is it a no? What is it? So you have to cover both in a better place where it hits bright, it's comfortable, and it's clear which vowel you're singing. It's not the same.
And this
So
one,
it's hard to find all the middle points in all the resources you're using to sing properly, but it's possible, of course.
because now that you mentioned it, we should also talk about the open voice, that voce aperta, just as you did when you try to. I cannot do it. I cannot even try to mimic it. Yeah, that one. Oh, that one I cannot even do it. There are many students who are taught to sing like that. And you notice because when they try to attack a role proper for their voice, they immediately, I don't know how you say that, you crack the notes because it's impossible to control it here. You can't do that. But there are many singers that still do it.
Well, that's not my problem.
Okay, let's go for another example. Let's go for. And this is a mistake that is very common. I called it insufficient pasta for a heavier role. I mean, you're a young tenor, and because you sing Que gelida manina fairly well, and because you have that high C, then you suddenly feel Radames. And I don't want to give names of famous recent singers who are still active because I don't
Just
want.
think of me singing La Banera.
Just think of a white voice singing something that is not adequate for you. And
No, please no.
but they do, and there are many singers that I insist I don't want to give name of. Many people have laughed at them because, and I was just thinking of a very famous one that he thought that because he had high notes, he could sing Otello. Oh my lord, there are very few singers in the world who can actually sing Otello. He said, what is the problem with the opening area? The problem with the opening area of Otello is that you need to have a huge voice, you know. And if you don't have that powerful voice that vibrates, yeah, you sound like Nemorino singing Esultate. So.
That's terrible.
And we have the opposite. We have uh, heavier voices trying to sing lighter roles, which
Well, you always want to sing Olympia.
and I can do it to perfection, of course. But on stage, you find a voice that is heavy, really heavy. We have the opposite, very heavy voices trying to sing Rodolfo, and that really doesn't work. So instead of singing a
Yeah.
beautiful "Que gelida manina," you hear a voice like "Que instead of singing love like he's mad at, at his lover, and that's
And
not.
it's really important to be wise enough and honest to ourselves to listen and say, okay, this is not for me. It doesn't fit to me. Bye. But there are lots of music you can sing.
Yeah, and now that we talked about why don't we go for a very beautiful piece of music now again from Luisa Fernanda. And there is something that very few people know about, or many people have not paid attention to that, and it is that the baritones in the zarzuela take the best songs, and that is not fair. Not fair for a tenor at least, because the baritone takes the best pieces, so that just doesn't work. But one of the characteristics of the baritones in zarzuela are that they are, if I could say it like that, high baritones. They are not like Verdian baritones. They are like high, almost like tenors. And that is the reason why many tenors have sung the baritone pieces. They are the best pieces and they are high enough for a tenor to sing them comfortably. And tenors usually envy that. So that could be the full explanation of why that actually happens. And from that very lovely role, which is called Vidal Hernando in the same zarzuela, there is a duet with actually Luisa Fernanda. Who, if you have seen the whole Luisa Fernanda, at this point you are already very mad at Luisa because she doesn't take Vidal. They are about to get married, but at the end she chooses the tenor. But who can blame her for choosing the tenor? Any mezzo or soprano could do that, so let's not blame Luisa Fernanda for that. They never keep the baritone, let's be fair. But the nice thing about it is that Vidal Hernando is a very beautiful character to portray. He has very beautiful melodies. He has three or four melodies, if I remember well, and the tenor does only has one, and it is not very beautiful from my perspective. So from that, there is this is a duet of which I will sing only two small pieces because I feel that these melodies are amazingly great from my perspective. The duet, it's their first duet called En mi tierra extremeña. And in this duet, what Vidal Hernando says is that from the love of a peasant for a woman and how, from his perspective, he can love this woman. I already spoiled the ending because I told you that Luisa doesn't keep him, despite he's the best for her, And I insist, I know, a mezzo or a soprano choosing a tenor, of course, that's what was about. That was meant to be, right? So let me sing a piece of that. Looks like. En mi tierra extremeña tengo nido de amores entre encinas bizarras y castaños y robles, donde el pájaro quiere que una pájara venga para ser soberana de mi casa labriega. Right after that comes the part of the soprano or a mezzo, which is usually the role sung by Luisa Fernanda. But what I also wanted to share with you is the very ending of this duet. Right after that, when she says, "Oh no, I'm not choosing you. I'm already in love with someone else. Let me go for that part. Mejores días aguardaré y entonces a cantarle mis anhelos con rústicos alardes yo vendré. Montaza de mis montes, relicario de mis sueños, de la feria de Trujillo, te he traído un aderezo, te he traído un aderezo, como piden las personas, de corales y de perlas, lo mismito que tu boca. Yo es que la quiero con un querer tan hondo. No hay esperanza para este amor. Luisa Fernanda, los hombres de mi tierra cuando quieren no pierden la esperanza de triunfar. Ay, montaza de mis montes, amapola de mis trigos, relicario de mis sueños, manantial de mi cariño, no se duelen mis amores del desdén con que los tratas, para brillo de desdenes, tengo un puente de esperanzas. So that would be part of the duet. I especially like the ending for Para un río de desdenes tengo un puente de esperanza. If I ever had a chance of singing the whole role of Vidal Hernando, of course I would do. If ever. If not, I would just go for the poor piece of the tenor in that zarzuela. If that should be the case. But let's keep moving with our list that is being so fun for today. One that you already mentioned, the voce capretina.
Oof.
I leave it to the teacher to explain.
Oh my God. Well, the word comes from goat because you sing like a goat.
Yeah.
I think it was clear for all of us. And it has to do with a deficient work with your diaphragm because you're not supporting your sound and the voice from here, from the deepest part of your diaphragm support. So the voice starts to shake in upper place, and it sounds like and that's not vibrating, it's just shaking here. So you have to connect your voice, all your superior work with this part, and above all, use your diaphragm.
And I'm surprised to see that you could actually somehow replicate that.
Because I'm afraid of.
And let's go now for the next one that is a nasal voice. Nasality is a very common problem in most of the tesituras. And that is also very difficult to explain. So I will leave Katia to explain it.
Again, yes, we start to place our voice in the head when you arrive and you have no experience singing. It's probably one of the first exercises that your professor is going to start to work with you. You will start with an M, an X, an R, to place your voice in the mess and take it away from your throat. In this uh, wide open voice. But you have to be constant and as a teacher, you must be clear that is not the only place you're gonna use. And like I told my students, imagine your nose, it's like salt when you're cooking. Even desserts use salt. But if you use too much, your your dessert, your cake, your salad, uh, your soup, anything that you want to prepare, it's gonna be a terrible fail. So you don't have to. Um, you have to combine your nose voice but with the rest of the spaces. For example, my voice it's it's too high, and I use my head voice most of the time, almost all the time. But but it's not placing here. It is, but I also use spaces in my head, and I know I sound like Mickey Mouse, but I don't sound like so it's necessary, but not necessary.
And I was telling you that it is very difficult to explain because languages like French are in fact
Yeah,
nasal languages. They have nasal sounds. And for instance, for me, that I have been speaking French for a good number of years, I know that the right way to get the pronunciation of a given phoneme is to actually nasalize it. So your mind fights the nasal sound that you know it's the correct way to pronounce it against the vocal technique at for the case of a given language, right? So,
yep,
for example, l'amour, l'amour, I know that amour is very nasal sound. It is not amour, it is amour in natural
yeah.
French. So, if you sing
But
l'amour,
you
l'amour, l'amour, when you place it in the right way, then the French doesn't sound well also. But the specific
yeah.
case of this language, there are many singers of us that we are used to nasal sounds. So since we are used to do it even when we are speaking, we have difficulty to identify when we do it when we are singing. Because the technique of the nasal sounds of our speaking language, spoken language, somehow mixes up with the technique of singing. So if your spoken language does not use nasal sounds, don't worry, it will hardly ever happen to you. But for those who already have
Try
it in their
to close
language,
your eyes to identify where you're placing your voice. And okay, in French, you have to use your nasal voice. But if you're singing Mozart and it's Italian or German, I was about to say Deutsch, German. Well, you're having a problem with the technique.
you do have a problem.
Yeah,
And the quality of the nasal sounds, nasal voices is that the bright the brightness of the voice is usually not bright but opaque. It's usually the other way around. And I could give you a number of names of very famous singers, of a very good number of tesituras that actually have nasal sounds. You would be surprised if I tell you who they are. But that also has to do sometimes with the technique, because around, and I want to do it so complicated because it is what is called the voce in maschera, and aperto ma coperto, and there are a number of things around. But the way the play, the area of your body where you place the voice can actually produce nasal sounds. So
Yep.
let's not complicate it any further, but it can be complicated. Okay,
Yeah.
let's go for another one. Oh, I'm going to love this one. Typical error of many singers: lousy, horrible pronunciation of a given language. And again, I don't want to spoil and give names because I can think of two very famous tenors who had a career or who were acknowledged of being great singers of French opera. And when I hear them, I say, oh my God, who told you to add a sound that in French doesn't exist? For example, pourquoi me réveiller? Pourquoi me réveiller? The sound is réveiller. That's the sound in French. Why? Who told you that it is réveiller? It is not réveiller. It is réveiller. And as that example, there are, in particular in French, because Italian is more like Spanish, but there are people who don't understand how to pronounce. Most of them sopranos, please don't tell them. That care too much for the sound and very few for the diction. I am going to think of a very famous Australian soprano. You can barely understand what she is singing because the sounds of her voice were beautiful, but her diction was horrible, and everybody knows that. Yes, you know who I am talking about. And Kathy already shared with us that she has perfected a lot the way to sing German, but singing German is also very difficult because of the way that language is pronounced when spoken. But tell me, how do you teach your why don't you share with us how do you teach your students to actually be understood of what they are singing?
We have to understand as singers that we serve our lyrics, we serve the text. We are not just vocalizing. Well, I don't have to worry about my text, but not all the pieces of music sounds the same or use the same source. We have a text, an important text. So you don't speak the language because I don't speak Russian or I don't know. But you have to do a phonetic work to understand what you're saying. Please translate your text to understand what you're saying and read it a lot. You have to speak it before sing it, and it will be more organic when you start to sing.
But singers need to really take it seriously
Oh yes.
because sometimes when you have the subtitles in your own language, what it means is you may not understand what the singer is actually singing. So you speak good French or good Italian or good Spanish, and still you need subtitles to understand what they are singing. That means a lot.
Well, you have to practice more. There's not. I don't think it exists like a tip. You have to study. You have to practice.
And I think that the advice that you gave is very good. When you're working on the pieces that you want to sing, you go for the written text. So I was thinking of Lucevan le Stelle, which the tenors usually mess up when they go for the part. Oh, you know, when they keep following on it, they start, since there is a vocal sound or a voice sound, and then there is a vocal, they usually join them, and the text loses effectivity when you do that. Of course, people may fall in love because they say, "Ah, the tenor did it greatly," but the text is not what is written. So, from my perspective, most of tenors really ruin Luce Van Lestelle because they don't give the proper sound to each of the syllables and the words. It is, in fact, it plays as a poem. Luceva le stelle, and he talks about how her steps and the smell of flowers and garden. That is very beautiful text. But since tenors keep going on for it without caring for the words, it loses sense. And
Yeah.
as I think it's time that you want to share us another piece of music. Yeah.
Probably now I don't want to.
That is
That's
not true.
yes.
Katia always wants to sing, believe me.
Oh yes, yes, that's true.
And this is going to
Okay.
be Musetta, am I
C'est
correct?
l'histoire. No,
No, what is it going to be?
c'est l'histoire.
Ah, this is a piece that I really love. So let's all pay lots of
How
attention to
come
it.
you hate it after this?
Okay.
Okay, let's try. C'est l'histoire amoureuse, autant que fabuleuse, d'un volant qui l'embrasse, dans les bras comme éternel, l'entraille sévère, que ne l'état pas, il met tout il voulait mais lui ne voulait pas. Oh, voulez-vous et vous me et vous son nom vous allez je vais vous aider, mais pas tout ça. Non, non, je ne l'ai dit on les disait dans la grande ville, il dirait devrait le miel, il dirait pas on lui dit de on il faut que c'est pas les colères et tout son il faut son nom vous allez je me vais vous le dire non, non, je ne l'ai Oh, come alors que faire vous voterez-vous pas Léon de les prenez votre langue défendez-vous pas mais c'est que l'on vous serez pénalisé rien que vous pensez, une fusillade l'amour s'envolera, les cranbernes sont son nom je vais le tirer, mais pas tout non, non, je ne le dirai pas. And that's the way you don't sound like that.
And what I was about to say is that life is unfair because in the zarzuela, the best pieces are for the baritones, and for the nice, cute, happy, hilarious songs are for the sopranos. So that just can't be fair. That can't be fair. Okay, after this very, I don't know, that piece always puts me in a very, very happy mood. You know, that
It's a
series of
lovely piece.
uh, I don't know. It's very nice to hear that song.
It's funny.
Let's go for the
Song.
final comments as we are approaching the end of today's program. Uh, this one is very common for all of us, and it also has to do with the evolution of the voice, which we didn't mention in the past, but maybe we can make some more comments. When we have an uneven voice, which means the voice is not homogeneous, and that has to do with what is called the passaggio. If you are somehow familiar with the vocal technique for singing, there is something called the passaggio between la voce di testa and la voce di petto, which is already two concepts that are somehow difficult to explain. So, and the thing
I
is that
will.
everybody has a different passaggio. So, where most of the vibration is either perceived in the breast, the voce di petto, and whether it is perceived in the head, la voce di testa, it changes from what is perceived here and what is perceived here. For the singer, it's difficult to manage to control how he's going to use his resources so that it doesn't sound very deep here and very light there, you know? The
Hey, that
voice.
sounds like me.
I cannot try to do it again. But you know, there are singers who you can perceive that have a very wide, powerful voice in the center, but when they go high, their voice sounds like this. Their voice doesn't sound with that richness. The voice is not homogeneous because of a problem in managing the passaggio so that the right sound is in the voce di petto and the right sound is in the voce di testa, which is a way singers have liked to call it that is much harder to explain. But I also wanted to mention that it also has to do with how your voice has been maturing because your passaggio is managed differently when your voice is young, when it is not so much deep, the resonances are different, and as your voice matures, the passaggio usually changes. The perception that you have of your voice starts to change. So you want to use your voice in the same way when you had a lighter voice. But you don't realize that now your voice, especially for male voices, our voices tend to descend 2 notes as we get older. The center of our male voices are usually lower as we grow old. And that also means that our passaggio is somehow displaced. That is very complicated. If you're a soprano, you may not have realized that because you're not a male guy, but our voices, male voices, tend to be wider as we grow old. So if you want to have that voice that you managed when you had that bright voice, believe it or not, I could sing parts of El Conte Almaviva. So imagine with a voice like the one I have now, trying to sing Non so che dir. I could do it then. I cannot do it now. But why don't you tell us, because you must be teaching that to your students also, on the very difficult art of having an homogeneous voice in the bass, in the center, and in the upper.
Yeah, I think that, well, I know that passages exist, but I don't like to think of them like enemies. The key for me is to use all our voices all the time. For example, in case of our deepest sounds, I know that my deep sounds are not as deep as someone else's. But for example, it's a deep sound for me. But I don't rest my voice only in the chest. It has a verticality. Even when I'm singing a bass note, a deep one, um, it has a high place too. It's not because when I start to go to a higher register, it will be complicated, and obviously the whole part, the station is gonna change a lot, and you will hear me like five singers in one, and that's not a problem. And when I'm singing, I leave my chest open, and it has a similar color too. For example, I was singing Olivia. Yes, was it's up, it's a high note, but it sounds with chest. It's not like yes, was because it's uncomfortable for you as a singer, and it's uncomfortable as a listener. So it's about working on voices all the time and try to make it as similar as possible in all your extensions.
And I think that it is very good that you mentioned it, because these concepts of la voce di testa, la voce di petto, which have been very misunderstood, and as a consequence, very applied very wrongly, because I use the word perception. One perceives the vibration in the chest, but it does not mean that you are only using your chest, just as you clarified. You
That's right.
perceive it, but it does not mean that it's the only way it is vibrating. And singers like to think that the voice, the higher the note, the voice feels like it's going to the cranial cavity, which may sound weird for people who are not familiar with vocal technique, but that is the way it is usually taught. So some singers tend to think that their voce di testa sounds here and their voce di petto sounds here, but it's not. It's, as you explained, a mix of the two. So you have maybe in the lower notes, you have more presence of the chest, or you perceive more presence of the chest, of the breast, and you perceive less of the head. And the opposite, when you go higher, you perceive more of the head and less of the breast. But actually, the two of them are working together.
You should use all your body all the time.
Absolutely. And let's go for the final one, a wobbled voice, too much vibrato. It tends to happen with voices once the singer has passed his prime. The voice in his vibrato is Let me see. I don't think I can replicate it now. Maybe if I was sick with the flu, maybe I could at this point. Let me think. Oh,
Maybe if I'm about to die.
maybe and it is very sad because you perceive the singer is attacking the central note with not very well, but the vibrato, instead of sounding like nice, like you see the natural vibrato is there. C'est la la, she riscal. Well, when they have this wobble sound, riscal, I'm not sure how to replicate it. It sounds like a parallel voice going like this, like a wobble, parallel to the
The main
voice.
note, it's not clear.
And one can find it in when singers are about to retire, but it's much sadder when you find it in young singers. There are many young singers that have too much vibrato, like that horrible wobble. It tends to happen more in dark voices. Mezzos usually suffer a lot of that, and many tenors and baritones and basses as well. Sopranos, not that very much. But the thing is that when it happens to a soprano, you immediately notice because that wobble is not usually there. That is sad to hear, but you can, I'm not giving names again, but you can find many recordings of singers who should have retired, even if they are young, with that sound of a gobble. Would you like to add something to it?
Um, well, yeah, it's sad because even something like the crystal of notes, it's well, it results like difficult to recognize. So it's terrible. You have to be wise and retire at the time.
And since nobody's perfect, and well, I am not, Katia is, so it's fair, we would like to improvise for you because, yes, we are going to improvise and you will forgive us if it doesn't work
Oh
well.
my God, we're going to do it.
But that's always the risk of improvising. We haven't
Okay.
tried it in the past. So if we fail, that will prove that we are not perfect, which was today's program. And besides not being perfect and to somehow excuse Katia on what is about to happen,
Oh God.
remember that since this is a
Thank you.
live recording and she is a good number of kilometers from here, she may hear the sound delayed. So don't expect synchronicity to be perfect. Timing you may notice that the timing will not be that good, but we want to have fun today. And I know that many people like it, even if you're looking at Katya's face and saying, no, this is not something.
I'm worried.
You know that we can fix it if I sing both parts or if you
Because
sing both
perfection
parts.
makes me feel safe and comfortable.
It's going to be fun. So let's. I'm going to play the sound of the piano, and please tell me if you hear it well. If not, I can increase the volume
Okay.
because at least we need the piano in the background to somehow try to synchronize ourselves, right? Volume is good enough, or you want me to increase it?
Well, if you could, it would be great.
I
Please.
can. So we'll do it. We will enjoy it. Hope you will enjoy it. Enjoy it. Don't criticize
And
us.
cheers.
Uh, my glass for the brindisi, you have seen it throughout the whole program. It's a 1 liter
I'm about to
glass.
finish my water.
Mine is not that nice as Katya's, but I hope it will do the job. And I hope I will not forget the lyrics. I have always
Oh,
known them by heart, but you know, that's one of our errors again. We sometimes singers forget
this
the
will be
lyrics.
an epic fail, I'm afraid.
So let's just enjoy it.
Okay,
Let's
let's
not
have fun.
overthink it and see how it goes. And at
Okay.
the end, we will just say bye bye. Okay, let's go for it. Libiamo nell'etica, lici che la bellezza infiora, e la facevolo, rassine mia voluta, Libiam nei dolci fremiti che suscita l'amore, poiché quello che al cuore onnipotente va. Viviamo amore, amor fra i collici più cari baci avrà.
Is the chorus singing?
It's up to you.
Travoi saprò di vivere il demonio giocondo, tutto è follia, follia nel mondo, giocherò nei piacer, dovrò cadere fremiti che suscita l'amore, poiché non al cuore onnipotente va.
You have to enjoy it. Andiamo la tazza, il cantico, la novella, il riso. In questo paradiso ne scopra il lodi. Quando non sami ancora il mio destin così, la tazza, il cantico, l'amore, il riso, in questo paradiso riscopra il odio, ne scopre Thanks everybody. Bye bye.